Hi everyone, my name is Khaled with KINETIQ, and today I want to walk you through a very common problem that I have had when working with sales, finance, and operations leaders, and we've seen this time and again. And it's where folks are dealing with a third-party EPM or planning tool that is disconnected from the underlying data and where they don't have access to real-time intelligence and real-time decision making. So what this looks like is folks will invest in third-party planning tools, EPM and CPM tools, and we've seen folks where they go into S&OP meetings and those meetings devolve into chasing data instead of making decisions. The finance team can't forecast with confidence, the FP&A folks don't have the data they need to do so, operations can't plan with precision, and sales doesn't feel confident enough to commit. And so leadership often concludes that the planning tool isn't good enough and they look at other solutions. Now, when that new tool gets implemented on top of the same fragmented data foundation, we end up in a situation where you've shifted where the reconciliation burden lies, but it's still there and the problem resurfaces eventually because people are looking at different data that wasn't unified and connected to their planning tool. Now, this does impact the P&L and this costs businesses, but it doesn't show up in an invoice when you buy the tools. It's an expense that is implicit. And so planners spend the majority of their cycle assembling the data they need, not actually analyzing it. Decisions are made on numbers that everyone knows are incomplete or out of date, but nobody can say by how much. We have lost revenue from fulfillment questions that take weeks to answer, while customers, of course, are not going to be patient with that. And we have working capital trapped in inventory that isn't visible or correctly positioned. So we're making finance, sales, and operational decisions on data that is disconnected from the plan we're using. So we end up allocating capital and making financial decisions based on yesterday's data, and the finance team ends up with a variance that they have to go and try and analyze or explain, as opposed to proactively driving results alongside their operations and sales partners. So the gap between your planning systems and reality is where you want to focus your efforts, and what it looks like when you solve that is you eliminate that gap altogether. And so we work with folks to implement native planning tools on top of their data ecosystem, on top of their data platform, so that plans run on top of the same data you're already using for your analytics and your BI. There is no ETL, there is no transformation and extraction of data. You don't have to pull CSVs and Excel files to start your planning process. It's natively baked in on top of your data. And that means that when one function updates their plan, our connected planning actually cascades that impact automatically to the other functions. So something that changes in sales will impact finance and operations and vice versa. That means that finance can actually track variance to its operational root causes and understand how to drive performance and what levers they can pull alongside their business partners. Planners can spend time on scenarios and decisions, not just assembling the data inputs to their model. And what the system says versus what's actually happening are converged because there is no gap between your plan and your data. They're in one platform. Now, the journey that people are trying to go here is they're no longer just solving a software problem around planning. What they're actually trying to do is make an architecture decision. And where people are today very often is a tool that is beside the data. Your planning tool sits next to your data as a third-party planning solution where you have to extract, sync, and reconcile all the time. And you carry that integration tax every time. Versus what a native planning tool looks like is when your data and your planning are in one solution and you have one governed foundation for finance, operations, sales, HR, and others to be aligned from the start, not reconciling after the fact. Now, a lot of folks are looking for where to get started on a connected data platform for planning and analytics, and that's actually why we focus on doing blueprints with sales, finance, and operations folks to give you a clear diagnostic of what's your current planning architecture, where the gaps are in that and where that's creating an integration tax for you and what it's costing the P&L. And then separately giving you a roadmap and architecture of how you can create a connected planning and data ecosystem where they all live in the same place. So if you're in finance, sales, and operations and you're chasing the data you need to execute your planning, you can get in contact with our team and we'll work with you to figure out how to get and where to get started and where the value is going to be for your organization and team.